Wow. Thanks again. Thank you is an understatement. Oh, the kids are leaving? That's right. I'm so sorry. Kids, do you want to hear me or do you want to go decorate cookies? What? We want you to be free to choose for yourself. I do ask that the adults please come back. Thank you, Stephanie. Oh my gosh. Again, the words of John Deitrich, which I think could easily come from me. I'm very comfortable sharing this message with you today. It seems to me that in all the years of my ministry to you, I have spoken about almost every phase of Christmas, and there seems nothing left to be said. Yet, the spirit of the season is so impelling that I cannot disregard it. The spirit of Christmas is inevitable and perennial. I say inevitable because it represents something innate in the heart of mankind, and perennial because all the changes of all the years have not been able to eradicate it or lessen in any degree its prominence. It has been celebrated since the dawn of humanity in every part of the Northern Hemisphere, regardless of his cultural stage or religious belief, and many attempts such as the Puritan movement in England and America have tried to stamp it out, only to find it rising again in the hearts and the customs of the people with renewed vigor. And because of its universality, it has gathered about its customs and legends representing every type of life and thought and culture. It is like one of its own plum puddings, an amalgamation of many ingredients which have accumulated from various sources as it has come down through the ages. Some of these have their origin in Christianity, more of them have their origin in ancient pagan rites, while others come from an antiquity so hoary that we cannot trace its birth. And while the source of all these customs and legends is interesting to know, we are not directly concerned with them. We do know that they represent something real and aspiring in human nature, and we love to follow them, regardless of their source or their rationality. We do not ask why we hang wreaths or holly or suspend the mistletoe bow, or why we bring trees into our houses and shout Merry Christmas to our neighbors. It is part of Christmas to do this. Our fathers and mother did it, and we love to do it. And I feel sure Christmas will always remain because it is rooted and grounded in the needs of mankind. It is one of the few seasons of the year where man's duly prosaic life feels the thrill of poetry and magic, when his stern rationality is tempered by imagination, and his striving after reality is flavored by illusion, all of which is good for humanity. And what is good for humanity, what really works out in the long run, survives the ravages of time and even our own stupidity. Christmas is good for us because it brings joy. Joy in a life which does not abound with this quality, but which needs it, sadly. It is a festival of merriment, thrust in among dull and drab days. We might ask them if they will hold their voices in the back. I don't think they realize that we can hear them. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. We don't want to interrupt the great Dietrich. This is true of Christmas everywhere and in all time, both in the pagan days and in the Christian days. Joy runs like a rippling brook through the old pagan customs and through the birth legends of the Gospels. There is much tragedy in human life, particularly now. The pages of history make rather dreary reading, with only here and there a bright spot. Sorrow, pain, misery, despair are universal experiences. The thought of our brothers who die and are maimed, of the women widowed of their love, of the fatherless children, of childless parents, and of ravaged fields and burned villages and bombed cities resulting in homeless multitudes, of the vacant chairs at almost every hearth, does not make for merriment. And many who are now encompassed by tragedy, or who are not encompassed by tragedy and who do not feel the sting of these immediate losses, but who thank heavens do have a social conscience, will be inclined to say, this Christmas will have to be a joyless one. How can one be happy when so many are so miserable? We need something occasionally to lift us out of such darkness into light, out of mourning into joy. And Christmas does it, at least temporarily. And even though it is only temporary, it does for the soul what a good night's rest does for a weary body. Regardless of how dull and humdrum life may be, this temporary joy instills new strength and courage. From the moment we begin to think what we shall give to our friends and members of our family, from the moment that blanket of secrecy falls over family affairs with little packages tucked away here and there, from the moment the stately tree is brought in and we place a lighted candle in the window, our joy begins to gain momentum until, on Christmas morning, the ripples of laughter, the thrills of appreciation, the shrieks of merriment from a joyous chorus of delight. I have always felt sorry for the residents of the southern climes like California, for it is impossible for them to understand the real significance and experience the greatest thrill of Christmas. One must live farther north to really enjoy Christmas, to understand the basic ideas of Christmas. Perhaps I should speak briefly of the origin of the festival, especially since so many think that Christmas is a distinctly Christian festival, a commemoration of the birthday of the founder of the Christian religion. But Christmas, like every festival which takes hold of the popular mind, is a nature festival. It coincides with the winter solstice, or the turning point of the sun and the lengthening of the days. As far as history can take us back, we find early people holding a midwinter festival and rejoicing at this time of year, due to the fact that the sun, after starting his southern journey and sinking lower and lower on the horizon each day, at last stops his downward course and after a brief interval begins to climb again, higher and higher as he makes his pathway across the heavens. On this fact, the life of earth and the life of humanity depends. Without it, no spring, no summer, no harvest, but only cold and death would be in store. With our knowledge of nature and our artificial provisions of light and warmth, this fact does not disturb us as much, but to the ancient peoples it was a phenomenon of dreadful significance. As the winter came and the sun appeared to be sinking lower and lower in the heavens, the days grew short, the nights grew long, and the dark and the cold became more and more intense. And to these people, the cold and dark were veritable demons, which left in their wake gloom and suffering and death. So at the time of year, it seemed to them as if their God, the sun, was either leaving them or was dying. But at the extreme southern point of his journey, he paused and hesitated for a day or two, and then started upon his return. And the glad shout went up that he was coming back, bringing the light and the warmth of life in his beams. This was the rebirth of their God, and they celebrated it with every possible manifestation of joy. We know that these primitive ideas no longer prevail, yet Christmas is still symbolically the greatest festival of hope and cheer, especially if you live in the northern climate. But there will be no Christmas this year anywhere if it is joyless. A joyless Christmas is a rank misnomer. It is a flat contradiction in terms. We owe it to Christmas. We owe it to ourselves and to our families. We owe it no less to those in sorrow to be merry at Christmas. For these latter, it will be at least a short reprieve from their worries, a day of exhilaration which will help them better to meet and bear their troubles. And for the former, there is so much to do, so many burdens for willing backs to carry, so many people to serve, that we shall do and bear and serve better with the joy of Christmas that we find in our hearts. Let us therefore give ourselves over to the simple delights of this blessed season. When the bells ring out on Christmas morning, let them find a merry echo in our hearts. And when we gather round our tables, let it be with the hearty merriment of old. If we remember the Scrooge of the first stave of the immortal carol, let us also recall the Scrooge of the last stave. When Dickens wished to draw his great story to a close, that story which rediscovered for his generation and ours the elemental joys of Christmas, and wished to show him completely how completely Scrooge had redeemed himself, he wrote of him, "He knew how to keep Christmas well." May this be said of us also, for to keep Christmas well is good for all of us. And to have the spirit of Christmas and enjoy all its implications does not require the spending of much money. The real Christmas is in the heart and not in the pocket, and its best expression comes from the heart and not from the pocketbook. The simplest expression of affection and goodwill means more than an expensive gift. As people seek to find happiness in that which money can buy, the world gives itself over at a Christmas to an allergy of spending, which robs much of it of its old-time beauty and joy. All of this may be desirable in its way, but we must not let it rob us of the wholehearted goodwill and kindliness and love which spell the real spirit of Christmas. Christmas is good for us. It is good for us because we look at life poetically and magically. Our modern life has been robbed of its poetry. I once read in a magazine that in whatever degree poetry is cultivated, it must be at the expense of some branch of useful study. How ridiculous! Poetry represents something just as real in human life as prose. And when we think of Christmas, we think of the truth of poetry, which Aristotle taught is more than the truth of history. I am ready to accept every well-authenticated proposition that the rationalists make. I agree with them that Christmas is not the birthday of Jesus, that every nation held a similar festival when the sun had ceased to wane and was returning in its power, that it was this date on which the Persians celebrated the birth of their god Mithras, and the Egyptians their god Osiris, and the Greeks their god Hercules, and the Babylonian their god Yule. I agree also that these customs are the outgrowth of either pagan or Christian superstition, that the idea of a virgin-born Savior is absurd, and that all these myths, fables, and falsehoods taught to the children in modern times, the greatest myth is that of Santa Claus, who weighs about 300 pounds with a belly that jiggles like jelly, descends through an 8-inch chimney simultaneously into 100 million homes. But I still believe in Santa Claus. For Santa Claus is a poetic symbol of the spirit of unselfish giving. He comes under the cover of the night to bestow his gifts, and the charm of his coming is destroyed if it is hinted that some real person is responsible for this occasion. Santa Claus is a reality, the greatest reality perhaps that we know throughout the whole long year. I can say the same about the legends encompassing the birth of Jesus. All these picturesque details may be physically impossible, but they have a poetic meaning and rich value. The story poetically contains the crystallization of a long plaintive hope for the future, for many who have been oppressed. Hope, expectation, dreams, and consecration to a higher purpose. The divine miraculous birth symbolizes the divinity and glory of every birth, and the hope that every child may become a Savior. It is your own mother love that croons the manger song. It is your own fatherhood that kneels with Joseph in praise and thanksgiving and consecration for the babe that lies so innocently in that manger. It is your own rejoicing that pictures the heavenly host, not as history, but as poetry, as symbol. It is good for us to contemplate these things and to rejoice in them on Christmas Day. Christmas is good for us also because it takes us back to our childhood. Adults are too generous when they think that Christmas is only for children. It is for adults who very much need this excursion back to the land of make-believe, the land of poetry and romance and mystery and song. If life's radiance is lost, it is largely because we have moved out of this world, priding ourselves on having put away childish things. Yet how wistfully we remember the years of long ago when Little Red Riding Hood, the Wizard of Oz, and fairies and Santa Claus with his turkey red suit and fat rosy cheeks were all as real to us as our own fathers and mothers. Scarcely a Christmas Eve passes that I'm not haunted by an old memory of a little boy, his nose pressed against the frosty pane, his eyes looking out across the white fields and up into the clouds, where he saw in perfect clearness old Santa Claus driving his reindeer from star to star, and finally down across the clouds toward earth. What imagination! What a world to live in! No wonder Wordsworth called it heaven. Some of us have sold our birthright for a mess of adult pottage, and Christmas offers us a chance to recover that birthright. We cannot remain children. We want no scourge of arrested development. We are glad for all the knowledge and experience that has given us the judgment and wisdom of age, but I am sure that we could have a better world, less prosy and more poetic, less matter-of-fact and more romantic, less cruel and more gentle, if we had more people who were childlike in this better sense, who had a delight in simple things, a keen sense of the beautiful, a merciful tenderness for all dumb animals and all fellow travelers in need. Except you become as little children, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. It is good for us, therefore, to throw ourselves with abandonment into the Christmas spirit and live like children again. But above all else, Christmas is good for us because it is a festival of hope. Whether you hold to the Christian or pagan interpretation, the particular charm about this festival is that it takes place when nature's face is cold and cheerless. The leaves have fallen from the trees, the earth is covered with snow and ice, and the air is no longer mild, but instead a sort of rigidity and harshness and inhospitableness settles down upon the outer world. It is as if nature were aging, as if she had exhausted herself, as if she were shrinking and fading. Somehow the end of all things is brought before our minds. Of itself, it is not a time of rejoicing, but rather of mourning. And yet, in the face of all, there occurs at this time the brightest, joyfulest festival of the year. We see and feel the wintry chill, yet something takes place which makes us disregard and triumph over it. The sun, which has been sinking in the southward, and so stripping the earth of warmth and life and beauty, sinks no more. Winter indeed continues. Outwardly, nature is the same, yet looking forward, we know that the power of the cold is broken, that in due time it will yield to spring and then to summer. Our joy then has this peculiar quality, that in it, in the midst of a time that on its surface would make us sad, that it is mixed with faith and hope. That is, it is a kind of triumph over what is immediately around us. It is like the captive who makes light of his prison walls, not because they are not there, but because he's assured that he will eventually be freed from them. And we are assured that life and warmth are not far away. In time, they will return, and we are assured of their return. And Christmas is simply the burst of this faith into song. It is the festival of that faith which is in the present ill describes the far-off features of the common good. Through the snowstorms, it sees June. Above the howling blast of December, it hears the bird songs. Beneath the snow, it recognizes the seeds that promise the harvest. And this midwinter festival is a kind of parable which finds substance in the mental and moral realms. It means at bottom, to take it broadly and spiritually, that in the straits of life, there is always a resource. And in the midwinter darkness, there is light and a spring of joy in the future, so as in every situation of life that seems at first dark and dreary, there is a way out and a happiness ahead. This is merely saying that the moral world, as in the natural, the resources of nature are great, that unless we ourselves are at fault, fate does not often shut the door on hope for us. Of course, we do have terrible periods of darkness. It would not be surprising if we heard rolling up from the masses of people like thunder from the heavens the old cry of Scrooge, "Christmas, bah, humbug! Every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled with his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart." It's a very pessimistic attitude. But it is well to remember in those times that just as winter is followed by spring, so there are happier days ahead. No matter how severe our condition, we should remember the line of the old Persian poet, "Even this shall pass away," or the words of that old revival hymn which we used to sing so lustfully, "Sorrow may endure for the night, but joy cometh in the morning." There is always a morning following the night. Of course, it is difficult while in the midst of sorrow to remember that there are brighter days ahead, even days when we will look back upon the tragedy as an invaluable experience. I look back upon some of the grievous times in my career, my heresy trial and excommunication. Times that seemed almost impossible to survive, real tragedies that darkened the sky and made life for the time being a horrible thing to face. And now time has removed all that sting, and I calmly view these instances as valuable, if not pleasant experiences. What time has done, time will do again, and the day will come when the present affliction, which may seem more than one can bear, will be transmuted into the pure gold of invaluable experience. And so it is with the powers of a society and community. It takes a great deal to doom a people. And this Christmas message of faith in the Oncoming better times is particularly needed today. Every part of the globe is in distress. We are indeed experiencing the midwinter of civilization. But we know that the sun has turned on its path, that in time the snow will melt, the earth will soften, the seeds will sprout, and the flowers bloom. And so we may be assured that there will be a resurrection of the life of our civilized world. Remember that this is not the first period of darkness humanity has encountered and successfully endured. Many times humankind has looked upon what appeared to be the impending destruction of the times and of the world, and in spite of every indication of universal calamity, in what triumphant persistency has mankind succeeded in surviving. So let us remember the real heart of Christmas celebration, and in these dark days of the world's life, let us never think that this is the end. Let us believe the way is open for brighter, happier days. So we need Christmas in the broadest and most human sense, for Christmas is more than the pagan celebration of sun worship. It's more than the birthday of Jesus. It's more than the wild orgy our commercialized world has made it. It is a festival of faith and of hope and of joy, of kindliness and goodwill and love. It is a day when poetry comes in to take the place of the humdrum prose of life and transforms it into lyric beauty. It is the day when we can safely give ourselves to harmless illusion and in the spirit of the child regain some of life's radiance. It is a day when human hearts feel the upsurging of a deeper nature, urging them to do better things, and the prompting of the spirit of goodwill which includes the whole world. Christmas comes to cheer us, to soften us, to lift us above our cares, to open our hearts to others, to stir within us the flame of fellowship, to put an end to scorn and envy, to rise above our miserable jealousies and croakings, to reunite estranged friends, to fix in our minds the sense of a radiant life. It brings in its arms warm-heartedness, mutual trust, a belief in the essential worth of humankind, a desire to see others happy, and a conviction that love is still the greatest thing in the world. Thank you.